Good morning and welcome back to the homestead. So we're done. You just saw us finishing up a little bit of electrical. The ham radio we have in the truck, I wired that in. We've got everything put together. The only issue we ran into was that one boot that I told you about. We used the factory boot. It's right down in here. It's actually, yeah, I can probably get the other camera to show you, but you can see it from the bottom. We could change it later if we need to, and we probably will. Again, knowing our plan is to tear all the sheet metal off this truck in the spring, clean the frame up and paint it, put new sheet metal on. We haven't shown you all that yet, but we did go to Connecticut about a month ago and picked up fenders, hood, doors, body, and a tailgate. So we've got everything except for the cab. And this cab's not that bad. I think we'll just patch it up. We have a floor pan. You saw us do the rocker panel in another video. And yeah, that's kind of our plan is next spring to go ahead and pull it all down, go right through it, you know, clean the frame, paint it, probably at that point rebuild the transmission, maybe put a new clutch in it. This clutch only has about 50,000 miles on it, so it's probably good for quite a lot longer. We'll just have to see, but we're going to be so close we may just do it. And we'll change that boot at that time. And yeah, go from there. So just to recap, what we've done is we started a couple weeks ago and we tore everything down. We put in a 400 horsepower kit from Power Driven Diesel. We'll leave you a link down below. But that consisted of delivery valves, injectors, AFC live, governor springs, and the equipment to set the timing. So we went ahead and we put, on top of that, we bought their K27 turbo, which is supposed to be a drop-in replacement for the, I think it's the HX35 that comes on these. And we wanted to upgrade just a little bit, and we wanted a new turbo because ours had 300,000 miles on it. We then also purchased the S&B Cold Air intake. We purchased the Banks Power Pack Twin Ram intake, and we purchased the, I'm not even going to try to say the name, intercooler. I'll leave a link to that. It's like Mitsubishi or something, but anyways, I'll leave a link to that. We purchased that intercooler. We put a new lift pump in it, and yeah, so we started out, we removed the exhaust manifold and the turbo. We put the new injectors in. We put the exhaust manifold, the new turbo on. We then did the delivery valves, put our ejection lines back on. We did the Banks twin ram. We put the governor springs in, which you see a video on that. We deleted the fuel heater, which is a problem area on these Cummins. It starts to suck air over time. And we did set the timing. We moved it to about 17.5 degrees from 14. This particular motor came stock at 12.5, but I had paperwork where the pump had been off and been into the diesel shop probably about 75,000 miles ago. And when they did that, they reset the timing tang in there to 14 degrees. So on this motor, when that is in the middle of the window and you can pin your cam, you're at 14 degrees, not 12.5 like the nameplate says. We went through that. We bled the injectors. You saw us the other night get it to fire up finally with a handful of ether and get the fuel up there, and then we got it all bled out. And we're ready now to basically fire this thing up and tune it. So we know that it runs, we know that it idles. So what we need to do now is we need to get it warm. We need to make sure that our idle is set for around 850 RPMs, give or take a few. And then we're going to play with the tuning in the AFC. So there's a couple things at play here, and one is your pre-boost fuel. So the AFC Live that we put in the cab, which you'll see a whole nother video on because we'll do a tuning video, but that AFC Live basically adjusts your fuel rate as boost starts. So what your AFC does, as we showed you in the other video, it's basically spring loaded and it holds a certain amount of defuel against the injection pump. And as the turbo builds boost, it pushes that spring and pushes that AFC arm forward, which allows more fuel travel in the injection pump. So picture it as kind of like a stop, right? You get this hard stop by your AFC, and every time the engine tries to fuel, the injection pump hits that and can't go any farther, right? It's like that's all the fuel it can get. And as the engine builds boost, that AFC arm moves and allows it to travel more and give it more fuel. So the AFC Live can only adjust the fueling after boost starts. It adjusts the rate at how fast you fuel, and it adjusts the maximum amount of fuel. So before that, we have what we call pre-boost fuel. And to adjust that, you've got a couple things you can do. You can move the AFC housing back and forth. It moves, I want to say, probably 1/8 to 1/4 of an inch. Maybe it's 1/4 of an inch. And that can move back and forth. And then you also have the pre-boost fuel, which is, it's an Allen screw on the back of the AFC housing. That, you remember that foot I told you about that the rack comes up against? There's an Allen screw in there that will push that foot forward into the more fueled area. So the more you tighten that screw, the more fuel it's allowed to have pre-boost. So what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to monkey with it a little bit to get pre-boost fuel so that we get, you know, just a little haze when we first take off, and then we'll set the AFC Live to also give us a clean acceleration and a max EGT. So the goal we're trying to get to is this truck is always required just a little throttle pedal to start, which means it's not quite got enough pre-boost fuel. So we're going to try to get that remedied and, you know, get it all dialed in. But I think for now what we're going to do is we're going to get you guys set up. We're going to fire this thing up and see how it does now that it's all together. We got to, you know, fire it up. We'll let it come up to temperature. We'll top off the radiator. And we're just going to check everything over for leaks real well, because we only let it run just a couple, you know, maybe 10, 15 seconds the other night, as you saw. So let's go ahead, let's get you set up, let's get the garage door open, and let's see if this thing will fire up this morning. All right, so I'm going to jump in the cab, we're going to let the grid heaters run, and then we're going to see if this fires up. It should fire it up almost instantly. So I'm not sure if you can hear me over the engine, but we're going to let it run for about 5 or 10 minutes, warm up a little, keep an eye on it for leaks. So we'll be back in just a little bit. Hey, let's try that again with audio. All right, so we've gone ahead, we've set our idle. We're at about 850 RPMs right now, but it's still a little cold. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to run it. We're going to get it good and warm, take it for a road test, and then we'll set the idle right around 850 to 900. And then we'll start playing with our pre-boost fuel before we go too far into anything, and just take it from there. So we're going to wrap the video up here. We will give you a little bonus shot here at the end of our road test, but we'll also make another whole video on tuning the AFC Live. So any questions on anything we've done through this process of this video series, or, you know, would we do these same products again, etc., you know, go ahead and give us a shout out, leave us a question down below. Really appreciate you guys watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe.
Is there's a significant change in the sound of the turbo. It's got a much suspension can fix the main roads. Hopefully we're not making you guys too seasick with this.
Really quickly, we're running 50-55 on a back road in high gear, running about 400 degrees on the pyrometer. That would normally be about 600 to 700. So that means we're using a lot less fuel to do the same work we used to do. So that's a good thing.